Power Half Hour on OTB Sports. Minimal contact in stadiums. That shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Right, you're very welcome along to this week's episode of the Paddy Power Half Hour. Every Friday afternoon, normally, we drop some truth bombs on you from about 1:30 on the Paddy Power Half Hour. This week, we're coming at you on a Tuesday because it's the OTB Paddy Power special. It's a full day of it here. We're into the second hour of it, and this is the quality bit of the day, for sure. It's myself and Enda picking winners, but also joining us are Republic of Ireland legend Stephanie Roche and the man himself, Paddy Power. You're both very welcome.
Thank you very much,
Thanks very much, Chair.
Paddy, I was just thinking, it's almost exactly 10 years to the month when, it's 10 years and 3 months since the World Cup was on, and I managed to pick 20 successive losing bets every day on the World Cup special. Things have changed. Things have changed a lot. I'll tell you how, because I got Enda, who's managed to pick a lot of winners for us over the last few weeks. So I want to get that out there now.
You can just see behind me there, I have a picture of you on the wall, Ger, from that time. You know, everybody in the office got one because you held a record, so congratulations.
And how well are we doing just recently?
Pretty well. I mean, we've had a couple of specials come in, a couple of big ones, I think, more than... Yeah, I know you're ahead in the leaderboard technically, but you've been choosing very low bets. I've had a couple of big ones.
This is your chance to brag. Come on.
17-1 2 weeks ago, West Ham to win half-time, Man United full-time. And then one of our Paddy Power specials last week came through 11-1 Arsenal to have over 35 crosses in the game. I think they had 36. So, that's two pretty big winners I'm going to take credit for.
And you're on the verge of another 7-1 winner if what has to happen?
Sheffield United to lose the next two games against United and Brighton.
Not to win.
Not to lose, not to win. So, yeah, that's one that's been 2 months in the making. So if that comes through, I'll be happy if I had any money on it, but I don't. That's the biggest issue. I haven't had any of my own money on any of those bets.
I was telling him now that the pressure is to try and keep this up. A 17-1 winner, an 11-1 winner, and potentially another 7-1 winner in about 4 weeks. That's the end of it. He should retire at this point, Paddy. Isn't that right? No one can keep this up.
100% quit when you're ahead. 100%. That's what you got to do. You take your money off the table. But unfortunately, you put no money on. But there you go, Enda. You live and you learn.
Right, let's get into it. We have a whack of fixtures. Some of them good, some of them not so good. It's Wolves-Chelsea tonight at 6, Man City against West Brom at 8, and tomorrow it's Arsenal against Southampton, Leicester against Everton, which is all of a sudden a big game, Leeds versus Newcastle, Fulham-Brighton, Liverpool-Spurs, which is obviously the game of the midweek period here, West Ham against Crystal Palace, and then Thursday, Aston Villa against Burnley and Sheffield United against Manchester United. But we're going to pick some of those fixtures in a couple of minutes' time. Instead, we've been running some Instagram polls to see if we could get some of the wisdom of crowds going here as opposed to, us, which is always better. You've been looking at Player of the Year. Yeah,
so we did Player of the Year, Manager of the Year, the who's going to be the top scorer and who's the next manager to be sacked. And we asked the Instagram voters to choose this. Obviously, I had to go back and tally up all these votes this morning. So there was over 1,000 votes on each of the sections. So there might be a little bit of a mix-up here. There may not be. I think the winners have been pretty... They're so far in the lead that there's no real issue with the votes. So Son at the minute... had 300.
That's not very convincing there. You sound like Trump trying to sow a little bit of debate into the facts. Spit the facts out, come on.
305 people think that Son is the Player of the Year so far. Bruno is the next closest with 100 votes. Salah 40, Kane 25, Calvert-Lewin 25, Jack Grealish 5. And then Manager of the Year, Ralph Hasenhüttl is miles in the lead here. He has 90 votes. Jurgen Klopp has 60, the closest. And then Roy Hodgson has 1 vote in this. David Moyes has more votes than Marcel Bielsa does at the minute, so that's pretty interesting. Harry Kane, the easy winner in the top goal scorer, he has 82 votes. Mo Salah is the closest with 50, and then Arteta 100 votes. Next manager to be sacked. Next closest Slaven Bilic with 40 votes. So not good for him.
Stephanie Roche, Footballer of the Year. The Instagram voters, who I would say are very Irish, are going for Son. I suspect that the actual Footballer of the Year, if things continue the way they are, is going to be Harry Kane because he's English. But should Son be the Player of the Year?
Yeah, I think he's probably been the most underrated player for a couple of seasons now, hasn't he? I think his kind of link-up play with Harry Kane has been brilliant. I think Kane has probably a few more assists than Son, but I think if Son continues to play the way he is, I think, as you mentioned, I think the English thing does kind of factor into it. But for me, Son is exceptional. I think just his work rate is his goals, his assists, his play off the ball. He just seems like a really all-round player and a really good lad as well. And Jose Mourinho seems to be getting the very best out of himself and Harry Kane together.
Yeah, it has been one of those partnerships that has really worked. Paddy, is this a market that people bet in all year, or does it kind of wait until the last few minutes, few months, few weeks really before they actually get involved?
Yeah, I think it's one of the ones like towards if somebody's not miles ahead, it's like Golden Boot or something. You might have a few quid at the start of the year just to have an interest in it, but at the minute, like, it's the sort of one you get kind of stuck into towards the end of the season. But Harry Kane is a pretty short price favourite. The Sun is actually 9-1, so if you did manage to hang on, I happen to think that he'd be the correct answer. I thought there was going to be a massive Liverpool bias in the Instagram vote, so this is refreshing that there wasn't. But even as a Liverpool fan, I'll say that. But anyway, Kane is 11-5 favourite, and De Bruyne is second favourite at 6-1. But I didn't even know he was playing this year. He's been pretty average by his standards this year, I would have thought. And then Son and Salah then both 9-1. So yeah, maybe I think Son would deserve it at this stage. He's the most understated kind of hard-working, stereotypical, like not getting the credit for what he does hero, and he has been for a number of years, like Stephanie said. So yeah, absolutely, he'd be the deserving winner.
The other thing is that this is a vote; it's not empirical evidence. So you also have to factor in the fact that some players are going to be more popular than others when the vote actually ends up happening. Like Bruno also has a case for being the most important footballer at his club by an absolute mile, but you just wonder if there's going to be if Man United are going to be successful enough for people to think, oh yeah, well you've had the impact that Son has or that Kane has. Let's talk about Manager of the Year. So Hasenhüttl is at the moment the favourite for this. The popular vote winner for this. Stephanie, it's hard to pick anybody other than the champions, especially in a year like this where you've had to manage against COVID, you've had to manage against the TV companies, if you're Jurgen Klopp, who are conspiring against you by making you play games in the early window. I don't know, I would wait till the very last second, and whoever actually wins the league has done the best job.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in terms of the Manager of the Month or Manager of the Year, I think you have to also look at the players they're working with. And I think Hasenhüttl has been brilliant. I think if you look back to last season, the defeat against Leicester, 9-0 defeat, you're thinking the worst nearly at the start of last season. And he got them going towards the end of last season, and he's continued to form this season. I think he has them playing really good style of football. They've got a good spine through the team with Vestergaard and Bedranich, and then Ward-Prowse has been brilliant for them this season as well. And I think Danny Ings has been really good too. So I think he's got the best out of his squad, and I think it would be hard to overlook him. But again, as you say, I think if Liverpool win the title, if Tottenham can shock everybody and win the title, it would be hard to overlook the likes of Jose and Klopp.
Yeah, and what about Jose?
Jose, I'm telling you, if he wins the league this year, there's an argument. Not only is he Manager of the Year, he is Manager of the decade, if not the last 20, 30 years. He will have won everything, and he will have taken Tottenham from a side that have been competing for top four, never going to win anything under Mauricio Pochettino, to a league-winning side within 2 years, adding in the fact that everyone has written him off to this point. So what he's done with Tottenham so far has been really impressive, and I think the all or nothing, I know it was sort of a little PR piece for Tottenham, and he would have had a lot of say in what went in, what didn't, but it did give you quite a bit of insight into what he was trying to garner there at Tottenham. And you can see that coming into this side this year as well, with Dele Alli sitting on the bench, not doing anything after the talk that they had in it. But also the likes of Son, Harry Kane, what he's done to Harry Kane when he sat him down and said, I'm going to take you to the next level. If you stick with me and buy into what I'm trying to do, I will make you an absolute superstar. And that's what Harry Kane has bought into. He is the leader in that side. And I think that Jose Mourinho, if he wins the league this year, will rightfully so get his plaudits.
What if they finish second? Is it not still an amazing job? Does he have to win the league for you to be able to...
They need to win something, because we all know what Mourinho does in the third season. So the second season Mourinho is always the best Mourinho. So they need to win at least a trophy, if not the league.
If Spurs win the league, Paddy, it is one of the most remarkable stories in football. Like it's not quite at the level of Leicester winning the league, but for him to have that comeback from, as Enda says, everybody writing him off as yesterday's man.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it would be absolutely justified. And Enda says he'd be manager of the decade. Well, it'll be 2021 to be manager of the decade so far, anyway. But yeah, I think. But if you look at it, okay, Liverpool win the league, you could argue that Klopp maybe doesn't get manager of the year because it depends who finishes second. But anyone else around, and like if Man City now come from whatever, they're ninth or whatever, if they come from ninth and go win the league, Guardiola, well done. But anybody apart from the top kind of two, really, at this stage who win it, I think deserves hats off. And Hasselnuttl probably has no chance because they're realistically not going to finish fourth, or they're going to finish like at best 8th or 10th or something like that. So at that stage, he'll have declined. If they're giving it out now, he'd have a chance. So yeah, I mean, realistically, I think Mourinho's got a massive chance, but they have to stay there. Leicester as well. I mean, Leicester have been hanging around like for a good few years now from a real flash in the pan. They proved that they're anything but that. So so it would be all Mourinho's. I think anyone bar Liverpool wins the league, they absolutely win Manager of the Year. But Liverpool and maybe Man City may not get it, even if they win the league.
It would be interesting. And Klopp, I'm sure, would use that to fuel his fire. So next is Golden Boot. What is the vote saying here, Enda?
Harry Kane's miles in the head here. 82 votes. Salah's the closest with 50. Jimmy Vardy close with 45, and then Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Current top goal scorer only got 6 votes altogether. So,
right, so yeah,
that's quite surprising. But in this, you really think that maybe Jimmy Vardy could surprise a few people.
So Dominic Calvert-Lewin has 11 goals. Mo Salah has 10. Son has 10. Vardy has 10. Kane has 9. Patrick Bamford, who doesn't get a look in, is 8. And then after that, it's Bruno Fernandes with 7. Callum Wilson of Newcastle with 7. Wilfred Zaha with 7. Danny Ings at 6. You could see Danny Ings making a bit of a run because obviously he missed some time with injury a little bit earlier on in the season, and he is, as we keep talking about in this show every week, one of the single most impactful players in terms of how market responds. So, top scorer, Stephanie Roche. What do you think is going to happen here?
I think I'd find it hard to go against Harry Kane just with the history that he's had. Obviously, he's scored goals for fun in the Premier League. And again, Jamie Vardy, probably another one who could pop up with a few goals, still scoring goals for fun. Since Leicester won the league, he's been an ever-present goal scorer, So I think it's difficult to kind of go against them. And Mo Salah obviously doing really well at Liverpool. Again, I think it's going to depend on who hits that vein of form and who's going to be kind of creating the most chances. And I think for me, Harry Kane just has that edge over the players that you've mentioned. What
has allowed Dominic Calvert-Lewin to come from an 80-1 shot at the start of the season to being a very short price now, and somebody who looks like he deserves his place in any of the teams he's playing in at the moment? Even playing for England, you're like, actually, it's hard to drop that guy.
Yeah, he's made a great breakthrough, hasn't he? I think getting his caps for England has definitely helped him. I think Ancelotti coming into Everton has really shown faith in him. I think he's really picked him up as a top player, and he's starting to believe in himself, and he has that confidence when he's playing. I think he's became the main man at Everton, and he's scoring, as you say, many goals. And it's just a difficult one because I think, as I said, going forward, will he have as many chances as Kane will have created for him and the team? I don't know. But I wouldn't write him off either. But I just think for me, Harry Kane, as I said, has got the history of scoring goals along with Jamie Vardy and Salah. So it's a difficult one for him. But if he keeps going the way he is, he will maybe be up there with a show. Yeah,
I mean, look, that's really very interesting, right? Because he is the focal point of the Everton attack. And so if they are creating chances, it's essentially him. Now, he didn't take the penalty the weekend. Sigurdsson took the penalty, so that would be a negative mark against him. But if you're Spurs, you will be creating chances for at least 2 of your players. I wonder, is it better to be the main person on the team, particularly when it comes to chasing something like Golden Boot, and the whole team, as the season goes on and they realise they're not going to finish in the top 4, start to hand the penalties over to you, start to create chances just for you, look for you in the box as opposed to trying to win the game. Whereas with Spurs, they're like, they don't really care who scores.
Yeah, that's a fair point, I suppose, isn't it? I think as you mentioned, if Harry Kane and Son come in the Premier League, I'm sure they'll take that over the Golden Boot. So that could come into factor. But I just think Harry Kane, as I said, he's so ruthless in front of goal, and he's always in good positions. Calvert-Lewin, the focal point of Everton. But I just think, as I said, the history of goal scoring from Harry Kane for me it puts him ahead of the pile at the moment. Yeah,
Paddy, all the value from this market is gone. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin at 80-1, that was the bet to make each way.
Yeah, it was. But if you picked that out, like, Jesus, some sort of oracle, weren't you? I mean, to be fair, none of us knew what was going to happen. But I think Stephanie's point is 100% the one you got to think about here, is what teams are going to be hanging around the top of the table, scoring the goals. And I would have a tiny worry about Kane with the old Mourinho team thing that if they start getting defended, they mightn't score as many goals, basically, as Liverpool say. And if that being the case, then Salah would just have the edge. And Vardy's uncanny. To the other point you were making there, the Vardy's just uncanny at being the one who just pops up and keeps scoring. Like, and even when Leicester are not doing great, Vardy's still towards the top of the goal scoring charts always. But I'd be just edging for Salah, I think. Yeah,
it's a fair point too. And Vardy, even when he comes off the bench, is proven to be capable of scoring goals. Okay, so the last one of this before we get into some games. First manager sacked.
Yeah, so
Landslide.
obviously Mikel Arteta is way ahead here. 100 votes, Slaven Village 40, Solskjaer on 32, level with Chris Wilder. It's amazing that someone who is currently 5 points off the top with a game in hand is level with the next manager to be sacked with the manager who hasn't won a game this year. So that it shows you what narratives can do for to shape people's opinion when it comes to it. But sure, like Mikel Arteta is surely the favourite to be sacked here. But it just depends whether someone can actually afford to sack him or not.
This is a market that moves all the time, Paddy, right? Like it massively overreacts sometimes to one result.
Yeah, 100%. But that's because we know what can happen. Like, I mean, how quickly managers can get the bullet. Like, because we don't know what's going on in boardrooms. If like success has been lined up and things like that. And funny when I heard Arteta on the sports news there earlier, the little clip they played of him talking about, the players need to take responsibility. I mean, when you're asking, it's a very dangerous thing for the manager to start blaming players for playing badly, because normally it's the manager's fault, isn't it? But he seems to be under pressure, but he's kind of young and everything. Arsenal just wouldn't like to be the club that starts flying through managers, so I think he might be okay. I think Chris Wilder is, at this stage, when you think about a club that's down the bottom, like almost certainly, absolutely going to be relegated again. Like, is there any point in trying to get a new manager and trying to survive, or just kind of suck it up and just say, right, well, next year we'll try and get back into the Premier League or stay in the race anyway from the Championship? So it's a tricky one. I mean, if we were going by headlines, you'd say Solskjaer would be the one. But again, they're not doing too bad. They're not too bad when you sit in the table with their game in hand. So I don't know. It's a difficult one.
Yeah. Stephanie, you're a Man United fan, I think. Where do you stand on Solskjaer at the minute?
Yeah, look, I think things haven't been good for United for a couple of years, have they really? And I think Solskjaer is probably okay at the moment. I think a huge part of why he's okay, I think, is he seems to have a lot of friends in media in England. And I think a lot of the time the media push what happens with their headlines and what's talked about on the live games on TV and stuff. And I think he seems to be getting the backing from the likes of Roy Keane and other players like that. So I think that helps him. And also the fact that things really haven't been working out at Man United, and there seems to be a little bit maybe more going on behind the scenes that are bigger issues. And I think he's had players who are being touted as world-class players who just aren't performing for him. I think the likes of Pogba and the crap around him now as well, it's his agent coming in and saying all this sort of stuff kind of takes the limelight off Solskjaer at times a little bit. I'd probably agree with Paddy on Arteta as well. I think Arteta maybe needs a little bit more time. I think the fact that he's managing Arsenal and they're maybe not doing so well is probably what has him top of the pile. I actually read an article this morning. Steve Wilder obviously has done really well with Sheffield United over the last couple of seasons. I think it was 2 promotions in 3 seasons. So he seems to have the backing from the club no matter what happens, which is strange to see when you see them only getting 1 point so far this season. So it's a difficult one for me. I think Graham Potter at Brighton as well is probably a manager who maybe might be brought into it. Just they made kind of a conscious decision to change the way they were playing by getting rid of Chris Houghton and then bringing him in. And it kind of hasn't worked out in terms of winning games and being ruthless at times. So I would worry for him as well.
But what about their XG, Enda? What about Brighton's XG? It's really good.
Yeah, people love referring to that. What was it, 3-0 against Leicester last week after somebody in this studio that wasn't me said that they might have a chance?
Yeah, I thought they did have a chance. Thought that Leicester were a little bit... I thought people were overreacting to Leicester. It turns out I was wrong. Leicester, not bad. And their manager can't get no love, especially in this part of the world. I have no idea why. Right, let's move on to some of these games here. Arsenal against Southampton. So Arsenal currently 15th and Southampton 4th in the table as it stands at the moment. The team used for this, Arsenal without Granit Xhaka after his red card against Burnley. Hector Bellerin is also out after picking up his 5th yellow card of the season. Thomas Partey and David Luiz out with injuries. Nicolas Pepe is back after serving his suspension. But Danny Ings is playing, and that's what I think is the most important thing here. Paddy, how do people try and price up Arsenal when they're in a run of form like this?
It's really, I mean, you're looking at this, I'm just looking at the odds here in front of me, and you're kind of going, Arsenal at home. If you asked me before the season started, Arsenal at home to Southampton, they're going to be long odds on. They're going to be certainties to win this. But now suddenly in the run of form they're in, there's only one team you want to be back in here, and that's Southampton. And Arsenal have to be favourites because they're at home. They're 6-5. They're odds against. So maybe a staunch Arsenal fan would say they're worth a few quid. But Southampton at 11-5, bigger than 2-1, you kind of go, that might actually be worth a squeak. You know, it might just, there's a small few quid because Arsenal are very vulnerable. It's the right time to be playing them. They really are under a lot of pressure, and a team like Southampton, who are full of confidence and on the up, they should be going there. Not to, like, normally a team like Southampton going to Arsenal, with no disrespect to them, will be going there to try and maybe get a draw at the very best if you're lucky, just try and keep the score down type of thing and play defensively. But I think you'd go for them now. So I think Southampton will go there with a bit of confidence, a bit of swagger, and they could do them. Yeah,
that's one of the hallmarks of the Southampton team, is that they do actually make an attempt to play, that they're not going just to batten down the hatches. Stephanie, when a young manager like this is going through a crisis of confidence, how do you interrupt that pattern? How do you stop that?
I think his players need to give him a dig out, don't they? I think when you talk about the players that he's missing, obviously there was a lot of talk about Ozil being left out of the squad at the start of the season. And when you look at the chances, I think before the Burnley game, they were the third lowest chances created in the league, which is a strange one to hear from an Arsenal team. You know, they're usually a team who are creating lots of chances and scoring loads of goals, haven't scored from open play in over 12 hours. Like, that's a worrying stat, you know. And I think, for me, I think the biggest problem for them is that they don't really have that leader within the team. But also you have to look at the chances they create. And I think Aubameyang, kind of Lacazette has missed kind of a couple of chances. I think in fairness to Arteta in the Burnley game, they were probably going to go on and win the game up until that incident with Xhaka. And look, Xhaka hasn't done himself any favours again with the fans, has he? I think he's let himself down again with the team. But I think for Arteta, it's about getting the players to play for him a little bit better and maybe give a little bit more for him.
Yeah, I think Arsenal are one of the few places in the world where they're very happy about London going back into the next stage of lockdown, so there won't be 2,000 booing fans there. At least they'll have to imagine the boos, which I'm sure is a Pavlovian response they have at the moment. Anything you want to say about this, Enda?
Yeah, I think Southampton are a really good price in this. They're 11-5, which would have them about 30% chance. But if you look at their actual XG and their stats going into this game, they probably have about a 50% chance of winning this game based on the results. So they're unbeaten in 10 of the last 11 games away from home, and they've scored 2 goals or more in the last 8. So given Arsenal's defence and Arsenal's attack as well, I'd probably go with Southampton in this as well. If you want to bring it even further than that, I'd probably go Southampton to 0 as well because of the lack of goals Arsenal are scoring. That's tomorrow's 6 o'clock game, Arsenal against Southampton. Let's move on and talk about Leicester against Everton. This is a Leicester side, and I'm making the point kind of flippantly, but Brendan Rodgers doesn't really get the credit he deserves, Paddy, does he?
No, I think he's a brilliant manager, absolutely brilliant manager, and he will have success, and it will come to him. And when he gets a bit older, he's only young still as well. When he gets a bit older, he'll be considered one of the very good ones. I think he's doing a great job at Leicester because there's, after winning the league and everything, there's no reason why they should still be as good as they are and as kind of as hangy aroundy as they are. So I think Brendan Rodgers deserves a good bit of credit from coming into that position and taking that team. I think he's managed to sustain and grow, so he's good. Yeah, you can see how Arsenal must be looking at Brendan Rodgers and going, lads, what was it too obvious? Do we overthink this a little bit? Going for the kid who has no experience versus this guy who has managed in the Champions League with Liverpool and Celtic and actually, would have clearly turned his back on Leicester if we'd just made the right offer. So what has impressed you about either Leicester or Everton? Because Everton have kind of been a bit patchy so far, Stephanie.
I watched Leicester Brighton live over the other day, and the way they play football is really good. And again, I think, as you mentioned, Brendan Rodgers kind of going under the radar in terms of how well he's doing with the team. They play an exciting style of football, and they don't let the other teams play. They have Vardy's pace on the break. They have Maddison, who has that little bit of magic as well. I've been really impressed with them. I think, as I said, they'll be quietly kind of sneaking up the table and might be in with a shout if they can continue the form that they've had. I think Everton obviously started off really well. Ancelotti has come in and really kind of changed their mindset. I think they seem like a team who actually want to go and win games and do well. And not that they weren't before, but I think he's definitely brought a different elements to the team. But maybe a few slip-ups, the loss against Leeds, maybe is something that they want to put behind them. And hopefully they'll be looking to try and get points on the board against Leicester. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think it'll be an exciting game. There is some team news for this. We don't think Coleman and Rodriguez will play, although they are both back fit. Now, I've seen a lot of build-up team news before about players being fit and not expected to play, and then them going straight back into the team, particularly when it's players like Coleman and Rodriguez who can change the texture and expectation for how that team plays and what the opposition have to do as well. So I wouldn't be surprised, and if they play in this at this point. What are the stats telling us? Yeah, well, if you look at the Seamus Coleman, James Rodriguez one, that their injuries and Everton's drop in form has gone hand in hand. So they need the two of them in the team for them to play the brand of football that they want, because Iwobi and Holgate just don't do it down the right-hand side for them. So that, if they are playing, I do think Everton are a better shout in this. But again, I know I criticised Brendan Rodgers a couple of weeks ago, but he obviously is a very good coach.
But my question is whether or not his teams can take it to the next level and win the games that they need to win. And they haven't proven that yet. But this is the kind of games where Leicester have won. And with the likes of Wilfred Ndidi coming back into the side, James Maddison's massive... Leicester have already weathered their injury storm. So if they can keep them fit and keep Jamie Vardy fit, then I do think they're within a good chance of staying in the top 4 this year as opposed to dropping out like they did last year. In this game itself, I do think that Leicester are probably a good shot just to nab this. Both teams to score maybe might be a good shot in this.
Yeah, so both teams to score I think is 2-1 on at this point. That's it. I presume Leicester are favourites for this, Paddy, are they?
They are, yeah. They're 6-5. So it's actually almost the same price as the Arsenal game, but this time Leicester are the equivalent of Arsenal with the odds, 6-5.
Yeah, you'd feel a bit more confident about backing Leicester at 6-5 against Everton than I would back in Arsenal at 6-5 against pretty much anybody. Maybe Dundalk. You'd have a little bit of confidence for that one. Right, so that is also tomorrow, and it's a huge game for Leicester because obviously just after that we've got the game of the midweek break, and it's Liverpool against Spurs at 8 o'clock. Leicester could be top of the table before that happens if they manage to beat Everton. So Liverpool against Spurs. What are your stats telling us here, Enda?
Well, if you go by stats or go by XG, which, as I've said, you can't always go by that, but there's going to be goals in this game if you look at them, because Liverpool are currently expected to score 3 goals or more at home. Tottenham are likely to score 2 or more goals away from home. So you're looking at that and that screams goals. It doesn't matter how many goals there's going to be. But I suppose this one's going to be an interesting one. We were kind of discussing this off air. Tottenham on the break against Liverpool's makeshift defence of Henderson, Fabinho, Trent, Nico Williams, depending on who it is. That's going to be a dangerous one. So it depends on whether Tottenham can get their counter-attack going properly or if Liverpool can actually get through Tottenham's really tough defence. So this one is really finely balanced. It's one of those ones where it's the big teams coming up against each other in a really condensed period, and they rarely end up in good games. So the stats say there's going to be goals, but I don't think there will be that many. I
think that's a fair point, Stephanie. This is a conversation we were having this morning on OTB AM. Daniel Harris made the point that if you're Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, or indeed if you're Pep Guardiola, you're really only interested in not losing the Manchester derby. You don't really care because you know the season is long enough. This is one of those games where both Liverpool and Spurs will be very happy, you would suspect, with a 0-0 draw right now and no injuries. If you offered that, they'd bite your hand off, Alan McCarthy. What do you think will happen here?
Yeah, look, I think it's a game. I think Liverpool have obviously been decimated with injuries. Klopp has kind of not being quiet about that. I think he's been given it about the sub situation and stuff like that and the injuries they've had to deal with. I think they've been quite resourceful. They were poor against Fulham. I think the first half an hour particularly, you could hear Klopp on the sideline demanding more for them to wake up and stuff. So, look, I think they'll be happy enough to get a draw. I think we know Jose's probably going to go into the game and play the same usual style he's been playing. I think against Crystal Palace, more so Crystal Palace's front three were probably the ones to break on them, and I think he didn't really see Harry Kane and Son breaking the way that he would and get those kind of chances made. So I think against Liverpool he'd be hoping to sit him like he does and hope that Son and Kane can work a bit of magic for them. But as you say, I think both managers, with the way things are, particularly for Liverpool at the minute with the injuries they have, and Jose probably be happy enough with a draw, yeah.
Paddy, what do you do if you're Klopp in this situation? Do you try and go and bloody the nose at Jose Mourinho and remind Spurs that they haven't won a league yet and that you're still the big boys? Or are you like, look, we'll see you later down the road, don't worry about it?
I think the latter might be the cleverer option. I think but with Mourinho, I'm just not sure. I mean, it looks like the right time for Tottenham to have a go at Liverpool, to really go there and try and take their pants down and embarrass them at home. But I think that what the points that have just been made there, that they're probably both likely to just take the draw and go home and wait for a longer season. But I don't know. I think Liverpool are 8-11 at home. It just seems like pretty short odds. I think they're better than Tottenham. But I think at the moment they're vulnerable. I mean, against Fulham they were pretty ordinary, and Tottenham are going well obviously at the minute. They're bigger than 3-1. I might just think Mourinho would love this. I mean, I'd love it. He'd love nothing more than to finish off as manager of the month and all that kind of stuff, and have this big victory over Liverpool at Anfield on his belt. And I think that while Liverpool may finish in front of them at the end of the season, I think Tottenham might just do them. Yeah,
and you can see why as well. Being top at Christmas and all the stuff that comes around that as well. From Mourinho's perspective, this would be a real signpost on the road. Everything's going the right direction. It's great that they're winning the games that they won, but these are the champions. This is a team who beat you in a Champions League final. It's a measure of revenge, and all of a sudden the game kind of begins to take on a lot more. In those circumstances in the past, we've seen Mourinho be very, very cautious. So is it ridiculous to suggest this could also be a 0-0?
It could be a 0-0, but I think there's more value in both teams to score here, whether or not it's going to be a high-scoring game, because around about 75% of Liverpool's games have finished with both teams to score this year, albeit you're not
3-1,
factored
4-1,
in
yeah.
Tottenham's defensive mindset. But if you think of this basically as what strengths do the managers play into that is the weakness of the other side? Mourinho likes a side to come on and attack them so that they can get them on the counter-attack. And with Liverpool's defence at the minute, then you do think that Tottenham can do harm there. But if Tottenham just shut up shop, can Liverpool break them down? If Liverpool break them down, then Tottenham need to go on to them. So Liverpool will want to score early in this game for them to get a foothold into it. That's what I think. Liverpool will come out in this all guns blazing like they used to about a year and a half ago and try do Tottenham early on in this game. If they can do that, then I think Liverpool win it. But if the longer the game goes on, it's an old cliche, I do think Tottenham will win this game. All
right. Either way, everybody's going to be watching. That's 8 o'clock tomorrow night. And then on Thursday, Villa-Burnley is at 6. But the game we want to talk about is Sheffield United against Manchester United. Really, Sheffield United, two more games without a win for you, Enda, to have a 7-1 winner. What's going to happen?
I think United are going to win this. It's getting into the period now where United are... The narrative is, can Ole Gunnar Solskjaer make it through Christmas? And he generally does. So I think Sheffield are just terrible. They're not scoring goals, and that's their real issue. They're not keeping goals out either. So it's been the issue all season. They haven't fixed it so far, and I don't think it's going to get any better for them. I'm interested to see if Pogba will start, because it's a real power play and bit of a power switch when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doesn't really need to start him anymore for him to be. For United to do well, but then he comes on the Champions League and absolutely changes the game, so he almost brought the power back to his corner there. Obviously Mino Raiola and Pogba are both now saying that the quotes weren't interpreted as they were supposed to. Pogba's basically saying that it didn't happen, even though the interview's there on paper. But I think on this game itself, I think United have too much for Sheffield, who are the worst team in the league this year.
Yeah, Stephanie, the descent from last season where Sheffield United were exciting to watch, and this is a young, creative English manager who's got 3 at the back, and John Egan's strolling out and playing nice balls, and it was like, what has happened to that team? How do you go from being confident and supposed to be there to all of a sudden looking like you're a fraud?
Yeah, look, I think it's a strange one, isn't it? I think they've probably started to maybe not be as brave on the ball. Maybe when they came in last season, they were exciting to watch. They were getting forward. They were, as I said, exciting to watch and playing good football with their wing backs. Enda Stevens done really well for them. He's just come back from injury as well, so he'll be a bonus for them to have back in. They've had a couple of injuries as well, important players missing for them, but I do think that it's been a strange turnaround, and I feel for Steve Wyler, as you said, he's done so well over the last couple of years, and for it to go so wrong so quickly, it's a difficult one to put your finger on what the actual reason is for that. I just think they've lacked that kind of intensity to their play. They used to kind of really try and get as many overloads high up the pitch in last season, and they were really exciting to watch, as I mentioned, but it just doesn't seem to be happening this season for them just as yet. So,
just on that, Ger, I was reminded of a quote. Somebody put this up on Twitter the last day of Daniel Farke when Norwich were obviously getting battered every single week last season, and he basically said that coming up into the Premier League, the teams who play attacking football and score loads of goals rarely stay up in the first year, and the teams that play defensive football and don't really attack much, they just concentrate on their defensive mindset, they usually stay up. But if they manage to stay up, then they can't get their attack right, and they don't stay up the second season. That's sort of what's happened to Sheffield United. That's why he wanted to approach the game with Norwich. They'll get their attack right in the Premier League, step up to the level, and the defensive, if they can manage to stay in the Premier League, the defence will come the next year, and then they will be more successful over the next couple of years. Didn't work out for them, but basically what he's trying to say is attacking sides, if they can manage to stay in the Premier League, are more suited to stay in the Premier League for longer than defensive sides. Sort of like, say, Leeds this year. Villa. Well, not Villa, come on. But you know what I'm talking about. Those types of sides.
But your point is that he's kept his job, and they're actually they're going to come back up.
Yeah.
because they're top of the championship at the moment.
Exactly, and Sheffield United will go down, they may not come back up.
So Chris Wilder should stay in the gig. That's what they should do. They should keep him and then bounce back up rather than getting somebody new in trying desperately to save the season, because there's literally no point at this stage. Do you, as a Man United fan, do you want to see more Pogba or do you want to see Van de Beek in? How do you feel, Stephanie, about that whole scenario at the moment?
Yeah, look, before I would have always been a huge fan of Pogba. I thought, particularly before the likes of Bruno Fernandes came in and Van de Beek came in, I would have always thought that maybe he had the quality and maybe just didn't have the quality around him to work. But I just think the last couple of months, he's obviously had a lot of injuries. He's been in and out of the squad. The rotation from Ollie has been a bit strange at times with different players playing all the time. But I just think, for me, and I think for most Man United fans, I think people are just beginning to get fed up. I think there's too much stuff going on off the pitch with his agents and him not saying anything. I know he said before the midweek game or the game against Man City that he's 1,000% with Manchester United. But I just think when you look at Fernandes and how he's came in and just took the Premier League by the scruff of the neck and really took off, I think people wanted Pogba to do that and he hasn't been able to do it. And I don't think it's that he hasn't got the ability. I think he's physical, he's strong, he's obviously got great quality on the ball, but he just doesn't seem to really, really want it. And that's probably the hardest thing for Man United fans to take, I think. As a fan, I think if you have an opportunity to play for Man United, you're going to give it your all. And I just think at times he just doesn't seem to have that. And as I mentioned, when you see Fernandes coming in and doing so well, I think that made him even look even worse because, as I said, as a fan watching, I would have said he probably hasn't got the quality around him. But Fernandes has come in and done it with the players that are there. Obviously, they've added a couple of more players to the team with Cavani and Van de Beek, as mentioned. But I just think his time is probably coming to an end, and I think it's probably time to move on and let him leave, because I think he's just tarnishing the name of the club. And I think Sir Alex Ferguson kind of has never been too far wrong about players, and he was never kind of a huge fan of him or his agent. So I think, for me, personally, I think it's probably time to move on and try and work with the other players that are there. Yeah.
Paddy, as a Liverpool fan, do you want Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to remain at Manchester United?
I think it's better when they don't have an excuse to be rubbish, So I think, no, I actually genuinely think he should be given more of a chance, and they should start. I think the problem with United is actually more in the players they buy rather than the manager himself. I think Ferguson probably was a huge band-aid over that for many years because he was just so amazing. But I just think they've kind of struggled to buy the quality. I mean, I think Pogba was a case in point. He just seems like Man United's a club that with such a history that they, like to Stephanie's point exactly, if she ever got a chance to play for United, you just literally, it would just be, it'd be it, and you'd live and die by them. But Pogba seems to be more interested in the brand Pogba and making loads of money than he is about winning trophies, and I think that's a big issue. Well,
and that culture seeps into the dressing room because you spend all that money on Alexis Sanchez and then you've got to give loads of money to Jesse Lingard because he's playing in the same team as him, and all of a sudden Jesse Lingard sets the barrier for what a young player coming into the team can expect, and all of a sudden it's 150 grand a week or 120 grand a week, and that snowballs to the point where everybody's getting massively overpaid. Somebody had the stat that David De Gea is the highest paid Spanish footballer in the world at the moment. It's like, that's pretty good for David De Gea. Not great for Manchester United when he's not helping the team win. I presume Manchester United are heavy favourites, even though the game is at Sheffield United for this?
Yeah, they are. Like, I'm not being an expert in managerial stuff or even compiling odds, but to use Enda's analysis, is very deep analysis, that Sheffield United, by the stats, aren't very good at scoring goals and aren't very good at keeping goals out. It's probably not a great combination. So United are 2-5 to win this, even away from home. And Sheffield United 11-2. Sort of game. They'd be delighted just to score an early couple of goals because if they do go behind, which they've done a few times, it's the ultimate banana skin, isn't it? Imagine this is the first game Sheffield United win against United. It'd be terrible for United, but I think Man United will win handy.
Strange things do happen at Christmas, including our guest odds compiler from Paddy Power this week being Paddy Power himself, as opposed to one of your pointy-headed colleagues who does actually go into the XG and shots and stuff and drop some truth bombs on us. He's turned Enda into a sage. So, as I said, miracles happen at Christmas. Stephanie, great to have you with us this week. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Paddy Power, thanks to you as well. That is this week's edition of the Paddy Power Half Hour. We're with you every Friday afternoon from 1:30. It's lunchtime. It's giving you some advice about how to navigate the choppy waters of the weekend's football. We'll see you next Friday at 1:30. Until then, take care.
The Paddy Power Half Hour on OTB Sports. Minimal contact in stadiums. That shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.